The world is beautiful. Lush green grass, trees, bushes, even birds singing. These valuable things are taken for granted in our daily and busy lives. Yet, have we ever considered that some of these things will not be available for the children of our children and the generations to come? Hi, I'm David Shoemaker, and this is Economics USA. These beautiful forests have long been untainted by man. Now they are the home for several creatures, animals, insects, reptiles, the whole lot. They even provide man with a useful source of resources, valuable and non-renewable resources. The question, though, remains that will these resources be available for the future generations to come? For advancement and comfort, man continues to jeopardize the resources in the world today. We are using resources at such a steady and fast rate that if we continue using the resources at this rate, we shall not have enough for future generations. This is where the concept of economic stability comes into play, and especially in the form of sustainable development. Sustainable development is defined as the type of development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the need for future generations. Very special guest here with us. He is the president of the Canadian Lumberjack Association by the name of Mr. Halbert Godet. He shall be discussing with us what are the costs, the basic costs that go into the production of lumber on a yearly basis. Please welcome in the studio Mr. Halbert Godet. Good morning, Mr. Halbert.
Good morning, Godet.
How are you? Well, Mr. Halbert, we'd just like to start off by asking a few questions on what kind of costs, the basic costs, go into the production of your lumber on a yearly basis.
Oh, David, for example, last year we produced 400 million tons of timber. The costs included in that were for cutting the logs, actually, also paying the salary for the workers. And also last year the prices of oil rose up, so our transportation costs increased a lot due to the fact that we transport a lot of our materials.
Oh, okay. I hear that you're, obviously considering many of the normal expenses that go to your business directly, but have you ever considered that there are several other costs, for example, in your job of deforestation, that may affect the society as a whole? We can call them maybe social costs.
Yeah, I understand there's certain social costs, but you have to understand that it's a business and we have to do what we have to do, otherwise there will be people from our company who will not be paid their salary, and other people that, for instance, our timber goes to making furniture or paper, so that will not be provided. So there will be other social costs in a way that will have to be taken into account. So I guess at the end of the day, like for example, when the prices of oil rose, we were affected as well, but nothing really happened. We just had to go on with it. So we can't really do anything about it, I guess.
So basically, the economics surrounding this is almost immoral, because in the fact that no one helped you, as you're saying, when the oil prices rose, and therefore you will already help the aesthetics.
It's not saying that we like to be disadvantageous to them, but it's just that it's out of our control. We cannot take into account everything, otherwise we're never going to run a profitable business, and there's no point in this.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Halbert.
Thank you.
From this interview, we can obviously see that there are several costs that any business takes into account. However, there are several other costs which are not taken into account. Several of these costs could be detrimental to future generations. We asked our economic analyst, Richard Gill, to explain.
Thank you, David. Now, in a normal economy, there are two forces that act in the market: demand and supply. These two forces work together to provide an equilibrium quantity and an equilibrium price, as so.
The position of the supply curve is determined by several factors, the major one being the cost of production. Normally, we would assume that producers will take all of their costs into account when determining the quantity to be supplied at a certain price. Hence, the price of the product will cover the costs and the production process will be sustainable. However, in the lumber industry, there are several external costs that are not directly imposed on the producer and so are not taken into account in price determination. An example of such a cost is the deforestation of rainforests, which destroys habitat, spoils aesthetics, and depletes the natural resource, timber. These costs may not be felt by the producer, but they will certainly have an impact on future generations. If we were to take these costs into account, the supply curve would move from here to here. At this new equilibrium, we can clearly see that the market price is higher and the quantity supplied is lower. Therefore, we can conclude that lumber is underpriced and oversupplied, consequently resulting in an unaccounted depletion of natural resources.
This is a clear example of unsustainable development, where resources used are not renewable and are not being replenished by taking their cost into account.
Thank you, Richard. Now back to the studio. For our viewers today, we have a very, very interesting debate set up, and we have two very, very dignified guests with us. On my right here, we have President of the World Wildlife Foundation, Mr. Johnson, and he shall be going against Mr. George W. Bush, the very President of the United States of America. Unfortunately, he will be slightly late as he will be arriving just, I think he's just arrived.
Sorry, I'm late.
Good morning, Mr. Bush. How are you?
David, I'm good. George, nice to meet you.
Well, gentlemen, glad that you could make it, and we would like to discuss the scenario faced by USA in Alaska, where Mr. Bush, I feel that he wants to exploit the oil and various other minerals present in the land, and he wants to utilize them immediately, whereas Mr. Johnson has clearly expressed various concerns that this oil will not only lead to problems in the wildlife and habitat, but also it will lead to non-sustainable development. So let me just first gather the viewpoints from our two guests. Mr. Bush, if you may care to go first and tell us what do you feel is the problem we face in Alaska?
Right. I believe that there is a great potential for America to gain revenue through the oil industry in the state of Alaska. Alaska is sitting on a bed of oil. If we don't use the oil today, we will lose the opportunity, the revenue of increasing the size and the stability of the oil industry in the United States. Think about all the jobs that go into the oil industry. We got to maintain that. How are we going to do it without the state of Alaska as an oil supplier? Alaska is a really, really big oil supplier in the United States. We have to be able to exploit it successfully and efficiently.
Well, that's a valid point, I must agree. Mr. Johnson, would you care to express your opinions on this matter?
Well, there's a lot of wildlife in Alaska, and it is, in my opinion, and many others like me, that the wildlife should stay there, as, of course, if you were to take out oil, you would have to kill all the wildlife. And furthermore, it's a big resource, and we should keep it there, as oil is a non-renewable resource. And as can be seen from Mr. Bush's policies, they've gone into Iraq and taken a lot of oil from there. So I see no reason why they need oil from Alaska at the moment. They should keep it for the future and hope for a future generation to make use of the oil, rather than thinking of short-term goals at the moment.
Well, two very, very contrasting opinions here. But what about the solutions? Mr. Bush has clearly expressed regrets that if we don't remove the oil from Alaska, we will not be able to provide the same jobs as we do at the moment in various different sectors of the industry. But Mr. Johnson, what kind of solutions could you suggest to this oil problem that we face, this conundrum in Alaska?
Well, there are many other renewable resources and sources of energy, such as the hydrofuel energy and etc. And I think instead of America spending so much money on gauging war, they should spend money in finding new resources, and that would be more efficient, and leaving this resource for later when it is actually needed. whereas at the moment it is fine.
Well, actually,